Coach Helen for YouFit Studio. Now, too fast or not too fast? If I had a skeleton here doing that, the sculpture, that would be like you fasted too much. However, I think every single, lot of clients over the years asked me about fasting. My thoughts, what do I think? Should they do it now? Helen, I've been wondering about fasting. Maybe she starts like that. I've been internet Googling about fasting and how to do it, and I'm not sure. And I think it's important to first kind of define what fasting is, because most people go, well, it's just not eating, right? Well, yes, this is true. Can't deny that is a fact. However, it's also about really defining, if you're going to be doing it, exactly how long you're not eating for, what period of time, what is your outcome, how frequently you're intending to do it, what are your plans around it, etc. They are the most important things to know and understand the definition of fasting. Other than the fact that I know this is such an obvious one, but breakfast is breaking fast, right? So your breakfast in the morning is to break the fast from overnight, right? So that was in Bridgerton just the other day, which I was like, they said the word break or fast, yes. So that's where the word breakfast comes from, to break your fast overnight, okay? So other things I've heard, same thing, different label, skipping a meal, all right? Starving yourself, laughing, because these are negative connotations really. If you see this, I've skipped a meal, that's bad, isn't it? Or why are you starving yourself? And that's also kind of seen as unhealthy ways of approaching not eating as many calories. However, ultimately that's also fasting, right? It's the same thing, it exists. So it's exactly the same thing, whether you call it a label or not. It is breaking fast, it is breakfast, it is skipping a meal for some people. Starving's a bit strong, right? I don't think I'm going to fast for 4 years. I don't think that's ever happened. It was also called many other things, like I've talked about being called creating a calorie deficit. Also true. Creating a calorie deficit is also true. And classic just fasting, right? What you call it though, I think does, let's just to stay with the definition of the language, whatever you call fasting or creating a calorie deficit with not eating as much food really determines how psychologically you approach something like this, by the way. Now, myself, I practice fasting, right? Now, I don't break fast, so I don't have breakfast on those particular days, or I only have 2 meals, right? So I have 2 meals on those days and 3 meals on others. So I don't break fast on 2 out of 7 days, right? Those are my choices. It's about 16 hours, right? If I eat about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 1, 2 o'clock, something like that, right? That is my personal preference. I call it fasting because that's what it is. However, some people will say, I'm going to be skipping breakfast, then that's what they're going to do, right? They may have less structure to it, etc. Or if you say, there's other people say I'm doing intermittent fasting, or I'm doing open window fasting, or the rest of it, however you label it, I think psychologically makes a difference with how successful you are as well. Just as a side comment, I think often just saying I'm just skipping a meal is usually less casual, less structured, and less thought process around it, if I'm absolutely honest. Right? It's all down to how you approach it. And I think that's partly when I'm saying when does fasting work? Fasting works, right, if you plan ahead of time, right? If you plan ahead of time, either with a coach, or I hope with a coach, one of us, right, if you remember. If you're working with somebody and they're planning it ahead of time, and it's a structured agreement on when you're going to place it into your week, then you're always going to be more successful. Me personally, I've structured my food for the entire week, pretty much from Monday to Friday. So Monday to Friday, in fact, it's fully structured this weekend actually. So actually, my food is pretty much structured 7 days a week. So for me to then place a fast into the week is actually quite straightforward, because I'm always ahead planning. The same for you if you're considering doing this. Always think ahead of time. Less successful tactics. Remember what tactics were? Short, reactive, less planned out, less successful usually. A tactic is somebody go, well, today I'm just not going to eat on the day. And go as long as I can without eating and see what happens. Yeah, usually unsuccessful, right? It's very reactive. Usually it's reactive to overeating somewhere else previously, right? So planning ahead of time is key. I can't even say that word. Key is so painfully appropriate and needed. You have to plan ahead if you're going to be doing fasting. Decide exactly what day you're going to do it on and where you're going to create a deficit. Now, different approaches. Now, favoured, again, for me, is not to break fast. So to go from sleep is usually a little bit more, what's the word? Gentle? Is that terminology? It's a little bit less aggressive in terms of fasting. So if you wanted to actually place a fast into your week, if you wanted to, a nice way to start, if I was saying I'm going to have breakfast and then fast for another 8 hours after that, is actually use some of the fasting time as your sleep. So define a time in the evening where you're going to stop eating, if it's your last meal or something you have after that last meal, and then count forward for 16 hours and say, right, when that 16-hour window closes, that's when I will eat at that point, right? Now, part of the forward planning is not just saying, well, I'm going to do it on this day, it's also knowing exactly what food you're going to have on that day to ensure that you keep within your calories, right? Whatever they are. You don't need to specifically know the calories, I don't think. Again, for me, preference-wise, as I am at the minute, I do know my calories. My meals are prepped. The calories I know ahead of time. Everything is meticulously planned, right? So, for me, straightforward, I have the meal ready. I know how many calories are in it. I'm going to eat that, and there's nothing else available to me to eat this currently in this house. This house is empty of food. All I have is what I bring to it to eat for that day, right? Or that evening. So for me, quite straightforward. Now, for other people, not as straightforward, especially if you live with people and there's food available, right? So doing a fast and then opening a fast in a house full of goodies and stuff like that, you can see why sometimes environment, well, not sometimes, all the time, environment plays a massive role in how successful a fast is as well. If you are not prepped for the environment, and I don't just mean food, I mean the people around you, etc., then you're less likely to be successful. Not because, ironically, not because you don't eat before you're meant to, because when you do finally eat, you want to eat, right? Sometimes, not all the time, sometimes, right? Sometimes your hunger levels might take a bit of a spike. So you may end up then consuming enough calories after fasting. You might as well have not bothered, being honest. I've seen that quite a lot with clients, right? And again, from experience, it's usually if you try and go hard and fast, as in I'm going to do 4 days this week, from doing none, right? The likelihood of that being successful for somebody is, and that's what you say, very true. Yeah, it's very true. The likelihood of that being successful is probably lowered the more you do during the week. Again, if you set out days that are not clumped together, mine, for example, are, what are they, Tuesdays and Thursdays? Because Tuesdays and Thursdays I'm in this house. In this house on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I only bring the food I'm going to eat. Therefore, I know exactly how many calories I'm consuming and I can easily fast without distraction. I don't have a choice. I mean, I pick up the food order app a few times, but I put it back down afterwards, right? Whew. Right? So those are the days in which I fast on, because I can control that. Knowing exactly and having your meals ready to eat relatively soon after you finish fasting is going to make that process easier, because you'll be making the food hopefully ahead of time when you're not hungry. All right, that makes a huge difference. If you try and finish a fast and make the food at that point, let's just say you'll overeat, right? Because you'll prep more. So think about your environment, thinking about what works best for you. For me, I know mine, you've got to work out your own. How much control you have defines how successful it is, and also what happens after the fast as well. Don't just plan to fast, what happens after you finish fasting, right? Now, another thing to consider when planning, okay, it's not, you have to look at the, how do I put it, you have to look at the whole picture, right? And by that I mean you're looking at your entire week. Now, most people, I would say, including myself, would probably admit that food is different at the weekends. I'll use the word different, okay? Most people consume more calories over the weekend. Human nature, generally speaking, unless they're working or have a work-operated job Saturday and Sunday, like 10 hours a day, right, they're going to be consuming on the weekend. If you, again, choose to fast during the week to lose weight, right, or if you're looking to manage your weight through fasting through the week, and then get to the weekend, the principle of planning while breaking fast during the day is the same for the weekend. And by that I mean, if you so to say for myself, if I choose to fast on a Tuesday and Thursday, successfully eat as many calories as defined in that time for the whole week from Monday to Friday and create a calorie deficit, get to Friday, do my weigh-in, because if you remember you do my weigh-in on Friday, go, hey, I lost weight, and then the weekend lands and I absolutely nail a takeaway every night, on Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, plus go get some, I don't know, some donuts, whatever, through the day, have a good afternoon tea delivered to my front door, whatever I choose to do, all of it all together. Again, it still goes back to the same principle. If you're not looking at a whole week, you can overconsume on calories at the weekend and still then not make up for your fasting. So it still kind of voids it out, right? So always go back to the energy balance I talked about many moons ago now. So you're always wanting to be using or not consuming, you want to be burning more calories than you're consuming, right? You want to create a deficit. So that deficit has to be looked at over a 7-day period. I mean, vice versa works very well, as in if you wanted to manage weight, you may kind of work towards the weekend, use fasting as a means of knowing you're going to overconsume equally, right? I'm not denying that. It's just how much, again, you overconsume can cancel out the reason for fasting. So always look at your whole week as a picture. And again, plan in advance at your weekends if you know exactly where you can consume and what, okay? Always important. Make it easy, right? Make it easy. The easiest day for me usually to ask clients to consider fasting is a Monday. You say, why is it Monday? What, because it's the start of the week and they're like, they're really fresh in the ideas and they're psychologically ready? No, because I know they've probably consumed extra calories over the weekend and they're probably not that hungry on a Monday morning anyway, right? That's the truth, right? If I'm talking to somebody and saying, okay, let's make it easy for you. Let's start with the 16 hours on a Monday. So you eat on Sunday night and then you don't eat again until you break the window on the Monday, right? Most people overconsume at the weekend. They have excess calories in the body. Again, consideration of 7-day rolling week. Yeah, make it easy. Okay, and this goes when I go back to a previous point I made about environment. Make your environment as easy as possible. That's all these points about making fasting easy, right? Have your food ready, know when you're going to do it, have your environment set up. The busier, the better, I find, right? Choose hours of which you're already sleeping for part of your fast, so you're already racking them up while you're asleep, right? And choose a day where you know you're most likely to already have calories in your body, which, let's face it, again, just to repeat, is usually the weekend. Look, the window can be different. You can go longer. I know last do a 24-hour. I think I did a 24-hour on last Monday. Why? Because I knew how much calories I'd had over the weekend, so I didn't eat until Monday night. Right? So you can do 24-hour now. They are, as you imagine, a hell of a lot more mentally taxing and require, again, more planning, more resilience, more ability to sit in discomfort, yes. And part of this as well with fasting is being able to sit in discomfort. I would say that. You're not, like the word I used earlier as a negative connotation to it is starving. You're starving yourself. No, you're not. You're not physically starving. It's uncomfortable. So you have some water and talk about it because my llama. Keeping hydration, all the rest of it is great ways of getting through it if you're considering doing it. But also, really, it's you are okay to do. It's not. I feel like I'm doing some more. I'm thirsty. No one has ever really. No one has ever. In fact, I say really. No one has ever come back to me and said that it was so uncomfortable they fainted. I think there's kind of like a deep-seated fear about not eating. And some of us think, well, we're going to faint, we're going to fall over, we may have a serious injury, something desperately difficult will happen. No. I mean, I've been doing it for 2 years now and not as yet had any issues. Obvious ones, obviously, aside. Doing it as a one-off, like I have done over the years, like I haven't always. I've chosen fasting as a means of dealing with lockdown, with the lack of my activity, right? That's the honest truth. Have I done it prior to that? Not for a long time, no, but I had done it maybe once or twice a month, right? And I always enjoy doing it. I like the challenge, maybe partly. Part of me is like, yeah, so long ago. Yeah, so it's, again, it doesn't have to be a particular time. Some people ask, well, how often do you fast? Again, it's all based on personality and your ability to deal with all the things I've just said to be successful. I generally do not like a client, personally speaking, to be fasting more than twice a week, at tops, maybe once, depending on how successful they are. Because there's so much that, although it stays, you try and keep it as simple as you can. There are so many variables that come into it, like especially with kids, significant other, social events, in previous times, right? Those things can be more challenging. You can do it one-off weekly, or previously, like I said, I used to do mine twice a month, and I would take like a Friday and Saturday, 2 weekends out in the month, just to essentially go for a period of time without eating, and actually felt quite energized, feel great, no real difference, just a great deal of weight management involved. So yeah, you can do 16, 16, 24 is also what some people suggest, but ultimately how often depends on how often you can maintain your behaviours in between. As I said, the most I've seen was somebody attempted to do 4 without speaking to me, and I think she managed 2 weeks, before weight went back up, and it was again down to planning not being appropriate. Now, again, psychologically, the busier you are, the better. Everything I'll say. But yeah, fasting, I'm a yes for fasting. I am. Where it's appropriate for the right person, the right place in the journey, nutritionally, mentally, all the rest. Yes, I personally love a good fast, actually. Like I said, I love the challenge. When it's applicable, it works. It has to be applicable. It has to work for you. And you have to be very forward planning and meticulous and ready, right? And that's why for majority of people, it's probably only a one-off. There is I'm talking about it a little bit next week, actually. I'm doing a series of lives next week about limiting beliefs. And one of them does touch on fasting. And I'm not inviting everyone to do this. Let's just make that clear. Especially if you're one of our challenges at the minute, definitely not that. However, I'll talk about it a little bit next week. And one of the challenges is challenge yourself to go for a period of time of not eating. What do you notice? What is real hunger like? Because we're very in tune with okay, I'm a little bit peckish, I'll eat. Ooh, I could just nibble a little bit of this. It's a first sign of hunger. Is it actually real hunger? Because from the amount of fasting I've done, I know the difference between a 5, where I know if I actually distract myself, have some water, move on with my day, that will move. And when I'm at an 8 or a 9, which is usually about 6:30 at night, right? If I'm doing a 24-hour, I know I'm ready, right? And I'm in that state, okay? Again, it's not unmanageable, but yet the test is really, and part of what I'll talk about next week, part of that experiment it's an experiment, be inquisitive. Actually, what is fasting like for you? What does it feel like to be really hungry, to really know what hunger is? Certainly if you've been living in a situation for the last 12 months, and before that in an office where food is readily available, how does it really feel to be really hungry? It can feel like a lost thing. It's very interesting when I ask clients to play that game with themselves, the hunger game, like how hungry do I need to be before I actually eat? Exactly what they come back with, because you're usually quite surprised, right? So recapping, call it breakfast, call it skipping a meal, call it negative connotation, calorie deficit, whatever you want to call it, fasting, right? The name. It's all about creating calorie deficit, but lots of things have to be taken into account. So you really need to know, planning ahead, your environment, what's happening, how busy you're going to be, how much control you have in the environment, exactly how many calories you're going to be consuming afterwards. If you fast and then eat the meal the size of your entire body twice over, it probably hasn't worked for you, and you probably have just consumed more than you actually created in deficit. So always not a great one. Same thing about looking at your entire week. So look at your entire week, see where you're, again, if you're going to fast during the week, you do 2 or 3 days and then blow it out of the water at the weekends, you're still coming back to a balanced situation, right? Sorry, my phone. I apologise. My phone. It's alright, Sam. I'll just mute him. Sorry, Sam. So look at your entire week, see where this may work for you. Again, only approach this if you really have the support of a coach, I would say. Certainly if you're one of our members, and definitely not if you're on a challenge or anything like that, because you're on set food, etc. Again, though, you can approach it different ways: 16 hours, 24 hours, 2 16s, and then 24. How often? Once a week, twice a week, a couple of times a month, right? It's always good to test exactly what it feels like to be hungry. Now, I mentioned it, so I will talk about it. So, limiting beliefs, I've got 3 lives next week. So, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday again next week. I'm doing three-part live because it's so big, couldn't do it in one, be here for an hour. On limiting beliefs, what each of them are that I've heard. I'll talk about what a limiting belief is as well, break them down, and then do them over the 3-part series. So just get a little. I'll give you an insight because this actually follows on from this week. Limiting belief number 1. This is one I'm covering on Monday. If I had more willpower, eyebrows. I'll say it again. If I had more willpower, I could stop eating so much junk food. How many times have you thought that? I will talk about that more in depth on Monday. In the meantime, it's still a little bit light out there. That is a good feeling. Look at that, 5:20. Oh, right. In the meantime, have a fantastic evening and a lovely weekend, and I'll catch you Monday. Bye.